Yeah, the internal inputs are things like computational tools, accumulated knowledge from prior projects, and just general experience gathered in the wind tunnel and other places out in the real world. But there's also external factors when it comes to building a bike, things like revised UCI rules, relaxation of small details in those rules, as well as just the way that the World Tour bike races have started to proceed. Yeah, when the bike was originally conceived, it was based on a request from Alex Dowsett to have a lead-out bike that would allow him to stay on the front for, I don't know, an extra 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters when he's stringing the whole peloton out and protecting the position of his sprinter. It was a bit of an unusual request at the time because we hadn't really ever considered that application. And in fact, where we had kind of viewed it as more of a breakaway bike. In this case, we're seeing that style of racing absolutely dominate the World Tour. The sports scientists are completely modeling stages in terms of elevation, wind. There's live data coming in from different wind stations. You're having soigneurs and bottle hand-up people out on the course with wind meters, anemometers, trying to detect the direction and magnitude of the wind and then advising the teams based on that. As much as this bike is an aerodynamic feat in terms of the frame and the wheels and the fork, it's also even more powerful weapon because it's allowing the riders to assume a position that itself is significantly more aerodynamic. We typically see that the rider with the bike on represents about 4 times larger drag than just the bike alone, and so that's clearly the dominating factor in terms of aero performance. And empowering those riders to get into that more aero position, to be somewhat lower to the ground while assuming that aero position, is really where we're going to see the massive gains with this bike. Yeah, the front end of the bike is clearly sort of the showpiece and where a lot of the tension is focused. And although it's certainly aerodynamic, which is largely driven by the interaction effect of the rim and the fork legs, which is a relatively well understood concept, particularly in track where the velocities are much higher. There's also a lot of other knock-on effects that we've been able to take advantage of, one of which is decoupling the mounting area of the actual bar or stem, as the case may be, from the center axis of the rotation. So you're splitting up the compression function from the bar attachment function. You're also shortening the moment arm of the rider's torque to the bike frame itself, thus improving the stiffness. In this case, we've been able to increase the stiffness of the bar itself by over 50% relative to the equivalent length of ABO2, our typical aero handlebar. The handling on the bike is tremendously sharp, particularly when climbing, for a variety of reasons. One of those is because of the really, really wild front end stiffness we've been able to impart on the frame using the 4-bolt spacing, or 4-bolt attachment, as well as the offset bolt location from the center axis, and that gives us a tremendously stiff handlebar. In addition to that, particularly on small sizes, the steeper head tube angle reduces the so-called flop that you get at low speeds. So when climbing on this bike, it really, really does feel tremendous. On the larger size bikes with a longer wheelbase, it allows the rider to sit in the bike instead of on the bike. Lower bottom bracket and longer wheelbase tends to give a more confident handling and confident feeling bike. Yeah, with respect to the aerodynamic performance, we already had the world leading bike in the Offshore 2. It was independently tested to be the fastest aero road bike last year by Cycling News. Our own testing showed us that it was, if not the fastest, then very close to the fastest, depending on the conditions and yaw angles, to everything on the market. And so we knew we had a really good place to start. One of the interesting things with this project is we needed to reestablish a new baseline for ourselves because we knew we were going to beat our existing bike by so much that we had to figure out how we could actually make a bike that was anywhere in the same ballpark. And the way we did that is we actually created an internal project called the Hanzo Road. And we created a road-going version of the Hanzo bike with 3D prints and then tested that in the wind tunnel. And that became our new frame of reference because this is so much better than any existing road bike. In fact, when we initially tested the bike, it tested the fastest of any bike that we've ever tested in the wind tunnel, including track bikes with drop bars. And so the immediate result was to totally reset what we view as the normative range of aero performance in bikes. This has been clearly validated by the Cycling News test recently where there's a large grouping of our competitor product, and then over off to the side lives the actual one, which is so far away from the other bikes, it's almost as big of a difference as it is in the entirety of the rest of the aero road bike market.